Everybody has to feel proud of themselves. And many times as immigrants, you're made to feel inferior. I think that if we don't take this free speech issue on, it's going to come back to haunt us.
We have to insert the past to fix the future.
There's a vast ignorance about the Mexican, and consequently there's a myth that the Mexican is pliable, he is non-resistant, and that anybody can do anything to him that anybody wishes. Well, this isn't true.
We need to change history. Otherwise, we're going to be here another century. You're all going to be gone, I'm going to be gone. So we have to work now. I want you to understand. I want to apologize if I mention names. For example, note this. Not every American is affected by this memorandum. In our family, we have Germans, Polish, Chinese, and we love them all. We see them all the same. I have a note here of unity. Unity is a force. And if we're not united, the opposite party wants us to be divided. And we lose force. He says, authority comes from above. Legitimacy comes from below. This explains why democracy cannot be legitimatized without an internal spiritual unity if all the people are not in agreement, both of the principle of legitimacy and of the great moral, harmonious principle of life. If that unity does not exist, the right of opposition becomes the battleground for a struggle to the death.
Latinos don't get mobilized, partly because they're younger, partly because so many are children of immigrants and haven't been socialized into the American.
So you need that third. You're talking that third generation is the breakthrough generation.
Maybe,
like it was with Italians, for example.
Maybe that's what you're talking. There is no national Latino leader. There are leaders of organizations who would like to be seen as national Latino leaders, but they're not recognized. The commonality is around language. The power of language is very important to Latinos, both primarily symbolically. Also, language has been used to punish Latinos rather than color. Language. In the Southwest, you were put in bad schools because they said, you're not smart because you can't take a test in English. And it doesn't matter that you don't speak Spanish. We're going to tell you you're not smart because we're not going to let you take the test in English. So language is a powerful symbol. There is an anti-discrimination associated with language, but not only language, that unites Latinos. But not the way anti-discrimination unites blacks. Blacks have a common experience. Latinos don't have a common experience.
because Latinos are not only some of the newest immigrants, they're some of the oldest residents of the country. If you go to South Texas or northern New Mexico, southern Colorado, where Mexicans go back long before those territories became part of the United States. You remember, the entire Southwest was originally Mexican territory and provided enormous wealth to the country. The gold and silver mining industry of California and Nevada, the sheep herding industry of New Mexico, the copper industry of Arizona, and the entire cattle industry of the United States had its origins in Texas, in South Texas. These were all Mexican territories. Much of the labor was Mexican labor that produced these industries. So there's an enormous contribution to the wealth and prosperity that can be traced back to the Latinos of the United States.
The annexation of Texas by the U.S. sparked the war. The war was short and settled in 1848 by the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty, which ceded to the United States the territory north of the Rio Grande and guaranteed the Mexican citizens the right to either stay with their homes in the conquered territory or move south to Mexico. Some moved in within the borders of Mexico, but most determined to stay in a land that had been home for generations. Those who decided to remain in the newly acquired United States territory were accorded treaty guarantees to keep their lands, maintain their Spanish language and culture. This was over 100 years ago, and today many of the Mexican-American descendants of those early people feel that those treaty terms were disregarded. For example, after the Mexican War, the United States theoretically recognized the claim of the inhabitants to all the land rights provided by Spanish grant. Unfortunately, some of these grants were vague or not accurately recorded, and thus were subject to expensive litigation. In all, less than half the land once owned or used by the Hispanos in New Mexico was ever confirmed entitled to a Mexican American. The land which remained in Hispano hands suffered in many ways. The equal subdivision among heirs created an insufficient land base to support families, and foreclosure through real property tax resulted in economic loss.
Our villagers own this land since before history. We have a paper from the Spanish crown. We have a paper from the Mexican Republic.
Well, if this is true, you have no problem. My children, the courts will settle this. But believe me, these matters take time. You must be patient.
With your permission, my president, we make our tortillas out of corn, not patience. And patience will not cross an armed and guarded fence.
The courts will settle.
With your permission, courts? Do you know of any land suit that was ever won by country people?
Has your land been taken?
My father's land was taken long ago, my president.